I gotta say, I thought we were just about done with all of the Pokemon controversy. Pokemon Sword and Shield is out in, what, a day and a half now? It's out on Friday. And it seems like it gets worse as we get closer to the release of the games. Now, I do think when the games come out, I think a lot of the controversy will start to die down as people just play the game and they decide, I guess, whether they're going to buy it or not. I am curious as to the sales now, definitely, for Sword and Shield, because if the sales are worse than Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, I think Game Freak will kind of step back along with Creatures and Nintendo and look at the situation a bit harsher than they would if, let's say, it does end up selling 18, 20 million copies. I have a feeling it's still going to sell ridiculous amounts of units. I think it will sell more than Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. I think by the end of January, they're going to report something like 15 million units. And that's just because it's Pokemon. In a way, I kind of look at Pokemon and I realize it's very similar to Call of Duty or Madden, as an example, just in the sense of it has a built-in fan base that will buy it every single year, and the company that makes it knows that. And that's why I don't think Game Freak is anywhere above criticism as we criticize EA and Activision and even Ubisoft for doing, well, that same thing, releasing a game that is almost cookie cutter all the way across the board, and then they put it out, of course, every year, or in terms of for Pokemon, every couple of years. It really depends on their release schedule, and now we're at least seeing, I guess, something a little different with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. But I remember back over a year ago when we heard that they were going to be putting Pokemon on the Switch, their home console, technically, I started coming up with ideas of, oh, what if they did some big changes? What if they played around with the gameplay or reinvented the game in general? And people didn't really like that, which is funny because now that seems to be what a lot of people are asking for. Now, originally people were asking for the national Dex, and we're kind of building up here to where we are now. And when we found out that that was not going to happen, they were going to be cutting Pokemon out. And I think we're like 400 or something are going to be in this one, somewhere around there. It seemed like it was building up with a lot of frustration from fans. And now the game is to the point where it can be data mined. It has been data mined, and models are starting to come out, and they're being compared to the models that were on the 3DS version of Sun and Moon. And, well, they appear to be almost exactly the same. Now, I say almost the same because they're not quite. There are a few little differences. It seems to be the number of vertices are all over the place at times, and that can happen if tweaks are made and they kind of play around with it, possibly to be, I guess, for being on your TV, for example. They have definitely tweaked them, but otherwise they are almost exactly the same. Yes, they appear to be reusing models from the 3DS version of the game, which really isn't that big of a deal, considering we had originally heard that there was plans to use them going forward. But the biggest problem here, and this is the thing that's really set people off now, is that Game Freak used the excuse of having to rebuild, well, all of the models for why the National Dex could not be in the game. And here we are now with direct comparisons of models saying, well, you're reusing them, so why isn't that National Dex in there? And it really is a weird situation, because either Game Freak, when they were there, Matsuda, Amori, they were talking with just media and press, and for some reason during an interview, they said that they had to redo all of the different models, and that was the big reason they had to make this decision. What are we going to do? And people will, of course, say, well, you delay the game. Yeah, that's not how it works with Pokemon. I know that is the initial thought. That's how it would have probably worked out most places. But Pokemon comes out when the Pokemon Company says the game comes out. That's just the way it is. Now, the Pokemon Company is made up of Game Freak, Creatures, and Nintendo, but their job as an entity is to manage everything about Pokemon, not just the video game. In fact, the video game technically is a smaller portion of their overall business, which includes merchandising, the anime, licensing. Everywhere you see Pokemon, it's because the Pokemon Company is making sure that it's there and it's legit. And everything has a schedule with the Pokemon Company, and moving one thing, say the video game, well, that can affect release dates and overall impact of any marketing campaigns that they may have already in place. It all has to kind of work together, and that's why this is so different from pretty much any other series out there. It has to come out when they need it to come out, and that happens to be this holiday, well, this Friday, and they're not going to move that date. And the way I really see it is Game Freak doesn't look great any way you look at this. I mean, really think about this. Either they did have to redo all the models for some weird reason, and there is a rumor as to why they would have had to have redo the models from scratch if they really did, and that doesn't even look great. The rumor is that an importer that they had made with plans going forward that it would work and allow them to import the different models that they had in the 3DS version and move it over and make it much more seamless, because they had created these models with just way higher quality than you need for the 3DS for future proofing. And the current rumor is that the importer that they had made and were looking to rely on didn't work. Like that already makes the company look incompetent there, right? The developer. But otherwise, they did reuse them, and then they just lied to fans. The weird thing about this is that it is, of course, based on a translation. Omari could have misspoken, but that's still not great. To me, I look at this and I say, Game Freak has a big PR problem. Like, seriously, they can't seem to get it right. It does remind me a little bit of the Fallout 76 situation that, again, can't seem to get anything right most times. But Pokemon is a large entity. They make a lot of money. They make the most money out of what? It's the number one in terms of entertainment completely in the world. Like, overall, billions of dollars. It is impressive, I would say, that Game Freak does come to the table with a product like this when you really sit down and look at it. And I do think it'll still be fun for a lot of people, specifically fans of Pokemon in general. Like, I think if you're looking forward to this game and you're already like, well, I'm going to buy it, I want to play Pokemon, that's just the way it is, then you should go buy it. Like that, I think that's perfectly fine. And I'll be getting Pokemon Sword to check it out. And I do think when it's all said and done, a lot of people are just going to end up buying it and playing it. But I do think you look at Game Freak, and like one of their big revelations for this game is a free moving camera in the wild section of the game. That seems weird, right? Like that is like their big revelation. It's a company that'll sell, tens of millions of copies of their game, and like their big development feat is that the camera can now move freely, I guess, with another analog stick. That seems strange to me. And I think it's more of a management problem in general. Like, I think this entire issue has been created by management, not necessarily the developers that are there on the ground floor, probably pushing, I mean, let's be real. Some of them are probably pushing 60, 70-hour work weeks to get this thing done on time in the first place. So I don't think when people call Game Freak lazy, I don't think that's correct at all. I think you could call Game Freak, especially in this case, mismanaged right now. I think that would be the more accurate look. Really, you look at this, and the biggest thing that fans are frustrated with is the lack of transparency from Game Freak. Let's say Game Freak came out and they explain the situation. They say all of this. They say, hey, we thought we'd be able to move all the models over. We really wanted to bring all the Pokemon over and make it so it was like, the Smash Bros reveal where it was like, everyone is here and all the Pokemon are in this game, and it was going to be this amazing thing. But the tool that we had just didn't work, and we had to decide what we were going to do. And unfortunately, well, this is how we had to go about it, because there is a deadline that we cannot move. I think at least fans would have been like, all right, well, that's a shame. Like, obviously, because all the Pokemon aren't there, but at least you're explaining it to us and you're very transparent. Think of like when Metroid Prime 4 had to undergo this massive delay. The biggest thing people talked about, they were disappointed. The biggest thing they talked about was that Nintendo was very transparent to them, and everyone understood that there can be development difficulties, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing, is people don't want the company to think they're stupid and lie to them about the game. And that's kind of what's happening here. And it's from a company or Game Freak development studio that does own part of Pokemon. So they're not going anywhere. Like, people are pointing out, they're like, oh, Nintendo should just move it away from Game Freak owns part of Pokemon. They're not like going anywhere. They're just going to pass it off and say, oh yeah, there's someone else going to develop it. We'll pay them to develop it. No, that's not going to necessarily happen here. They want to keep Pokemon close to the chest, if you will, and they don't want anyone else looking at it or playing around with it. So that's not going to happen. Really, what would have to take place here is Game Freak would have to undergo some massive improvements for what I think is a game that has become kind of dated overall. Again, to the point where in 2019 people are talking about a free moving camera. And the biggest thing here is I think the move from a handheld to an HD system, a home console like the Switch, yeah, that's kind of exposed Game Freak a little bit here when it comes to this. And it's not, I don't think it should be unexpected for this. I think people were looking for a Breath of the Wild Pokemon, and what they got was a Game Freak Pokemon. That's actually a conversation we might have going forward, maybe with a group of people. We'll maybe talk with them about Game Freak and possibly them improving going forward, and if they should, or I mean, if they're this comfortable and everything keeps selling, should they improve? I think that's another question to have as well there. But let me know what you guys think about this situation with the models appearing to be the same with some minor tweaks. And that kind of, I guess, would mean that either they rebuilt it from scratch, actually did, which would be a massive waste of time if their importer had worked, or maybe their importer did work, or they got it working, and they just moved everything over really quick at the last minute. It really is hard to say because the animations don't do this game any favors either. Again, though, if you want to buy it, go pick it up. Have fun with it. I think a lot of people still will. But I don't think people should leave Game Freak off the hook or let them off the hook. They're not above criticism. Thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure you like the video on the way out if you liked it, dislike it if not. And I'll see you guys next time.